Death, the Frail Barrier. There was once a man named George Mallory. He was English and fought in World War I. Approximately 880,000 English men died in World War I, along with many other nationalities, totaling about 9 to 11 million military personnel alone, not to mention even civilian deaths. Now, Mr. Mallory not only survived the war, but afterwards joined in the quest to summit Mount Everest. At the time of the early 1900s, a great deal of international attention was focused on summiting Mount Everest, and George Mallory made 2 unsuccessful attempts with men who had also survived the Great War. It was probably very healing for them after the war, it was probably very therapeutic to go do this with him. Now, on his 3rd attempt, he and a companion, a man named Sandy Irvine, disappeared into the mist near the summit, creating widespread long-term interest in whether or not they had reached the top. To this day, nobody knows, and it is only recently that their bodies were found. When I read that their equipment included not only gingered lemons and canned quail, along with a case of the finest French champagne and several bottles of 120-year-old rum, I did wonder about the circumstances. But I'm kidding. Necessities vary from one person to the next, as we all know. Now, writing about these men later, a man named Wade Davis discussed whether George Mallory and Sandy Irvine reached the top of Everest. He said this: "Surely nothing could have held Mallory back. He would have walked on, even to his end, because for him, as for all of his generation, death was but a frail barrier that men crossed, smiling and gallant, every day. They had seen so much of death that life mattered less than the moments of being alive. As climbers, they accepted a degree of risk unimaginable before the war. They were not cavalier, but death was no stranger, and they had seen so much of it that it had no hold on them. I love that life mattered less than the moments of being alive." We often see this type of clarity from people who have survived or cheated death, experiencing a close call, so to speak. This can be good or bad. The good part, clarifying for a person the need to choose carefully how to spend their time. And the bad aspect, less helpful. Psychologically speaking, someone who cheats death, as they say, could develop a neurotic need to push the envelope. So much so that one long-term Irish study examined whether or not people who had survived close calls with pulmonary emboli or blood clots exhibited reckless and risk-taking behaviors above the norm. This was identified as a risk from the close call. But I was stuck on the words, a frail barrier, and dying in a smiling and gallant way. One imagines how those soldiers were compelled to look upon so many friends lying dead in trenches. What could they do? Keep moving. There can come a reality where, when we encounter a lot of death, we become more and more comfortable with it because we know that, like birth, it's coming for us, and it's not the scariest thing anymore. The healthy question for those comfortable with the idea of moving from this reality to the next is, how do I want to spend my time? Because like silence being a luxury, surely time is the one thing that, generally speaking, we can't buy. I do like the idea of dying well, though, and wondering what that would take for us, how we could prepare every day for our death. We Catholics used to talk about the 4 last things, being death, judgment, heaven, and hell. I think also that we Catholics obsessed about judgment and hell and gave the Lord's mercy and the reality of heaven very little airtime or consideration. I don't think anyone should be thinking about hell, to be honest, because why would you? It's not for you. If it is, you're not listening to this with any curiosity at all. In a word, the gospel is good news, not threats and coercion. To be lost in God's mercy, to study it for ourselves, that is real preparation. For example, where do I need mercy today? Where today Do I really crave God's understanding of my struggle, my plight, my loneliness, or my pain? Where do I need mercy in my regrets, that most painful condition? And we all have regrets. Having regrets indicates an examined life. Now, perhaps these questions are the preparation you and I need to wonder about what a peaceful death would look like. The more we know God, the calmer we become. None of us will ever fully understand ourselves, but to know where we crave God's loving light, that, my friends, will surely take us right into his loving peace.